Arsenal have just almost shut down one of the most feared attacks, not just in the Premier League but in world football. And they did it not just 11 versus 11, but also 10 versus 11. And for the most part, they made it look easy. So how exactly did they do this in both instances? Let's take a look, starting with the game at 11 versus 11. In the first half, they kept City to under 1 expected goal, and they weren't just sitting deep. Early on, they showed that they were here looking for the win, and they were aggressive in the press even with the 4-4-2, with the two forwards pressing the centre-backs, usually forcing them to play out to the full-back, where the winger could then help to shut down the build-up. The danger, of course, for Arsenal was that they were a man light in the midfield, and the metronome, initially Rodri, would have the potential to get on the ball if the press was broken, and advance with Arsenal now having 2 less in defence. But the Gunners never let this happen. Rice was tasked with backing up the press, and he had to jump onto the deep single pivot. And with Partey on Bernardo Silva, Gundogan could be the free man in the midfield. So the problem wasn't quite yet solved, as he could potentially receive and turn, leaving City to attack, with Arsenal now 3 men light. But again, that did not materialize. That's because Arsenal were brave, pushing a centre-back higher up and backing the remaining man in a 1 versus 1 against Haaland, so that the midfield press was truly man-to-man, which forced City to go long and could lead to a turnover in possession. But higher up, when matters were 11 versus 11, that's where we saw City look dangerous in the first half. Again, they set up in the kite formation that looks like it'll be this season's staple. Rodri, or Kovacic from here in, at the base, and with no Rico Lewis to move in on the right or left today, it was Josko Gvardiol in the attacking left central midfielder position. And this actually opened up a new tactical option for City, which we'll talk about shortly. But rounding out the diamond, we had Bernardo and Gundogan rotating at the tip, but primarily it looked like this. And even when they were deep, Arsenal was sticking to their 4-4-2, with the front two still applying pressure on the back line. But committing a centre-back to a midfielder this deep on the pitch was a massive risk, as one flash of brilliance would mean that City were bearing down on goal. So how could Arsenal defend that instead? Well, they contracted the entire midfield and the back line and played so narrow that the midfield advantage was completely wiped out for City. But Guardiola knows that this is the main way teams look to nullify the citizens, so that's why he's keen to play with 2 pure dribblers that are happy hugging the touchline, so that when the City switches come, both are able to take on their fullbacks, and we did see this happen at times when the isolations occurred. But down the right, the threat of Doku meant that Saka was entrusted to be extremely hard-working to double up on the Belgian, which made his life a lot harder. But remember how Arsenal were aggressive with the 2 versus 2 press high up the pitch? Well, when they were deep, they still tried to be aggressive, and Martinelli took up this halfway position, trying to give Arsenal the best of both worlds, through being able to drop in to give them the compact shape, as well as push high to get a 3 versus 3 press going. Instead, it was the worst of both worlds, as the Brazilian often got caught in no man's land. So what that meant is that if Partey was caught too central, expecting the narrowness of Martinelli to cover Bernardo, a piercing pass could find Bernardo, now giving them the advantage in the midfield and opening up potential to unlock the Arsenal defence. But it also meant that Martinelli was poorly positioned to then adjust and double up on Savinho when the whipping pass did come in, leading to promising situations for the right winger early in the match. But it wasn't just the 1 versus 1 that caused danger here. With Calafiori dragged wide to try and account for this, the gap between him and Gabriel began to grow. And early on we did see a scenario where Gundogan looked to dart into the space, and this led to a massive chance. But as the right central midfielder, Bernardo would often make the run through the half space to try to get into a good attacking position. And all of this plays into the City goal. Martinelli is pressing high up, leaving Savinho 1 versus 1. Calafiori is dragged out wide, creating space for Bernardo to attack here, and this time Partey leaves the central zone to close down Bernardo, but so does Gabriel. So now Savinho has space to attack central, and Gabriel's movement has grown the space between himself and Saliba. So there's a chasm in defense, and Haaland runs straight into it and coolly slots home. Okay, so why were Arsenal able to defend so effectively when they went down to 10? Saka went off for white, and we saw Arsenal, rather than just switch to a 4-4-1 and maintain their general structure, fluidly adapt, first to a 5-4-0, and then subsequently even a 6-3-0. City were really looking to press home their advantage, maintaining a roughly similar shape of the back three, but now with an extremely high line. And in fact, that back three was often in the Arsenal final third. So what this meant is that the City midfield was also pushed higher, looking for space between the lines. This image on screen shows the problem for City. These are the combined touches in the second half of Ruben Diaz, Akanji and Walker, who had the top 3 touches on the pitch. The point of having these 3 men this high was to lure Arsenal's midfielders into a press to create space between the lines, which would mean one decent pass would see City bear down on goal. We saw hints of this, but it never fully materialized. That's because this midfield 3 were dedicated to protecting Zone 14, meaning they were never drawn into the press, and they were happy to see these men go side to side to side for 45 minutes. By forcing their most creative players into space that did not exist between the lines, it meant that it wasn't City's most creative players on the ball, because they could never be found here. Instead, it was these 3 getting all of the possession. Another worrying sign is that those 3 also combined for 9 shots in the second half, all from outside the box. This incredible central defensive shape from Arsenal was backed up because their back 6 meant that whenever the ball did go wide, they could easily back up the press, committing an extra man to stop the wingers being the one to cross by giving them no room to cut in, and instead trying to force them backwards so that it was the likes of Walker and Akanji in those crossing positions. And City did look to overload the back post, and Gvardiol's positioning was interesting, as it allowed him to attack the box with Haaland, so that City had 2 massive men looking to attack the cross. But the quality of crosses was consistently poor because of the personnel that was whipping them in, with Raya having a field day claiming these simple floating crosses. Arsenal were moments away from a seismic win, but regardless, this should still give the Gunners encouragement. For the managerial tactical score, Arteta's men earn an 8, while Pep earns a 4 for not being able to make any significant changes to cause more of a goal threat, but drop your ratings below. And for a deeper look at a new manager making incredible changes this season, check out this in-depth video on Flicks Barcelona. Click on screen now.